Welcome to the Adoptee Thoughts podcast. I am your host, Melissa Guida Richards, an author, adoptee, and mom. Each week, we will delve into the nuances of adoption, as well as tips for how to bring up difficult discussions in your adoptive family. And most importantly, we will not shy away from tough topics. So thanks for joining me today, and let's jump into your weekly dose of Adoptee Thoughts. Can you please introduce yourself and your connection to adoption?
Hey everyone, I'm Molly E. McLaurin, and I am a transracial adoptee. I identify as Black, and I am of mixed background. And so I have a twin sister, so I'm adopted kind of with a racial mirror, but only one racial mirror my whole life is kind of rough. But yeah, I'm a domestic adoptee, and I was adopted as a baby, so lots there to unpack, but that's how I identify as an adoptee. And I am also the founder of Monarch Connections, and so that is a company that brings people together to make meaningful connections. We do events online and in person. We do a monthly gathering that we've done for almost 5 years now called Adoptee Talk. I might have misquoted that, maybe like 4 years, but that COVID time has been a time warp. We started that, and I'm still like, well, how many years before that was it? I don't even know, because this time warp has been crazy. But yes, so we do meet adoptees monthly, and it just provides a safe space for adoptees to gather and connect and meet one another and become friends and build a community on their own, and then come back together on a monthly basis and connect. And then we do lots of events that are unrelated to adoption. We do like women's events, kind of events that help us get to the uncomfortable places and talk about things that often society doesn't want to talk about, to lift up people's voices and hear people talk about the hard things, whether it's women who want to talk about pregnancy, labor, miscarriages, or dating life, self-esteem, things like that. And we also do events where it's educational based, empowering others. You name it, we've probably talked about it. So it could be, I want to learn how to travel, or I want to learn how to connect with other people, social events, things like that. So marriage events, Christian events. So lots of things to get people out of their shells, talking, and striking up conversation for the next thing. It could also be that you want to learn how to be better, like your better self, and that is what we do through coaching. So a lot of conversations that come up during these events, sometimes someone uncovers the fact that, oh, I want to be more confident. And so as a certified life coach, I say, hey, come over here, let's do one-on-one coaching. And that's really, really fun too, because I love coaching people. They get to come out of their shell in a private session and be like, wow, I am more confident, or I can do this. And it's beautiful to witness what people can see about themselves. And then when they apply it, it's a beautiful thing. So I've had a couple of dating clients get engaged, one get married. I'm really excited to see the next marriage happen next spring. So I'm really, really, really happy, excited, and encouraged to see that the work is, not just sitting right here. So that's Monarch Connections. That's me. And I'm a mom. My son is 15 months. I'm married. My husband is awesome. We've been married for almost 7 years, so I'm excited to see what the next couple of years look like. Thanks for helping me to, introduce myself and be on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. For those of you who don't know, who are listening, who don't follow us on Instagram or other socials, which you should, I'll put the links in the description. But Molly and I, we are working on a 4-week course called Transracial Adoption 101, and we are very excited. It's a beginning / intermediate course for adoptive parents, prospective adoptive parents, family members, whoever is connected to the adoption community who wants to learn about transracial adoption from the adoptee perspective. And it will be starting National Adoption Month this November. So make sure you guys check out the link and all the description. Tickets are on sale now. And we are so excited to have people start signing up. We're going to have a private Facebook group for the group. We're going to have weekly resources for you guys. And it's going to be an hour and a half class each week, and we are going to have so much valuable information. Molly's husband, he's going to come in and talk about trauma. And
Yes.
we are just so excited to have these different pieces come together and just be able to work together. But
Yeah.
before we get more into that, I have a question about the coaching. Do you
Yes.
get invited to the weddings?
I did, and it was really awesome. So it was actually a friend of mine from college. He was a couple years older than me, or a couple grades older than me, and so we had always been in like social circles, but I never was like, "Who are you dating?" Or I think as a freshman, I was a freshman, he was a junior, so I was like, "Who am I to ask this junior like anything like that?" And we met through a ministry, so we always were hanging out with groups of friends, but I never really saw him with a date or anything like that. And sometimes college you just kind of avoid you may not date as much or whatever. Certain people have their own little ways. But
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I approached him, I think, just in a random cold text. Hey, I'm doing this thing called dating coaching, Christian dating coaching. It's either one. And he was like, yeah, I'm in. And it was really cool to see him, to see him say yes. And then, wow, it was such a beautiful journey. Like, he jumped right into the coaching. He was like all in. He applied things. He took notes. Coaching, I think people think it's like you do what the coach tells you or the coach gives you advice. And I think that's what I thought coaching was too. And I think the good thing is, and shout out to all those coaches who go through the coaching certification, because you're not really a coach if you don't. Um, that's just my little side note. Or you're not really coaching from a place of coaching if you don't really know what coaching is. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it's not giving advice. It's listening and walking and partnering with your client, because the client is right. The client knows, or the client is the expert because they know their life. And so to say you need to do X, Y, and Z, they might not know if they're going to do X, Y, and Z. That they need guidance and coaching to help get there. Partnership. So I said to this client, hey, like when he became exclusive with this girl who is now his wife, it was just a beautiful thing. I was like, oh my gosh. And when he proposed to her, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like watching from Instagram, like, oh, this is great. Oh my gosh. He's like, I owe you everything. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you did this. And you had the tough conversations like that you had to have in relationships. And it doesn't end in dating, y'all. It comes into marriage too. Um,
Yeah.
and I see you smiling back at me, Melissa, like, yep, you're right. And that's a good thing. Every relationship is something that requires work, and I think that's where you and I agreed to delve into tough conversations and things that make us uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
yes, I got invited to the wedding, but it was on Zoom, but that still counts.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
beautiful. I was happily weeping for my. So and I just recently met Heather, who's the wife, and it was so beautiful. I got to meet her and see them together, and it was so fun. So I think we'll all hang out soon again, so I look forward to that.
That's
Shout out to
great.
Justin and
Yeah.
Heather.
How do you keep everything? Because, like, I know I work in adoption and writing. And so, like, sometimes I just talk about motherhood and, like, that stuff for my other part time job, just writing for a motherhood magazine. But,
That's cool.
like, you have, like, all these different pieces for your company. How do you keep track of everything?
And I used to have like travel as part of Monarch Connections, but then when COVID happened, I was like, I'm not really going to promote travel because I don't know if I'm going to be traveling right now, right?
Yeah.
In the thick of it. So I kind of I think what I noticed is I like to bring people together, and that's the core of what I like. Molly likes, and I think that if I really think about you know if I bring people together at, let's say, like one of my first events in person was, well, not really first, but one of my first when I went full time was a paint and sip, and I
Mm-hmm.
love those kinds of events. And I was like, I don't want to just do this for women. I don't want to just do it for a certain type. I want to do it for anyone. And so when I realized it sold out very quickly, people were excited about it. I realized like I got to keep just doing really interesting events because people will show up.
Mm-hmm.
And so then during the pandemic, when we were all really locked in our houses and couldn't really go anywhere, some friends and I got to talking, and our conversation turned into basically like, oh, we could turn this into a podcast. And then we just eventually turned it into an event, and it was called
Mm.
Hear Her. And so I think the conversation was what we didn't learn about our bodies in the school or in church or from our families, and why not?
Yeah.
And how if the three of us were talking about we never learned X, Y, and Z, then we know that other people haven't learned those things. So therefore, there's a lot of conversations that I'm having with people that turn into like, whoa, what if we bring this to a stage, you know?
Yeah,
What if we bring
yeah.
this, you know,
Which is
to,
funny because we were talking as we're planning our event, and we're
yes,
like, like we keep having these deep conversations about adoption. And I'm just like, I should have you on my podcast because this is good
yes,
stuff right here.
yes. I mean, I think the power of bringing people together, yes, like, I feel like any conversation, I can talk to anyone, a stranger, make a new friend. That's how, you know, you and I became friends like that. I was like, hey, can we connect outside of DMing each other? Great, wonderful, you know who's this weird girl trying to call me. So, I think it worked out. And I think that, yeah, how do I juggle it? I think about the tenets of empowerment
hmm
and lifting others up. And, and I think bringing people together around those qualities, like if we have a women's event and we're talking about empowerment, how are the women going to leave feeling empowered?
Yeah.
Or how are they going to feel empowered during the event? If I'm having an event that is for Black History Month, talking about what is my why, I don't have to just serve women or just serve men or just, promote a story, but I want everyone to come together and then feel heard, feel seen, So there's certain words that I have kind of in my kind of like on a mood board that I had created way back with a business, like my business coach, and he was basically like, these are words you want from, what I'm hearing you say. These are words that I think you want your clients to feel. And so I was like, yeah. And so if I'm hitting those words, and I think that some of them are empowerment and uplifting and confidence and feeling like you're seen and heard, then those are the kinds of events I'm going to have. And those are the
Yeah.
things I'm going to do. So sometimes it's merchandise and I come out with that here and there, or sometimes it's, something else. As long as it's doing those two things or those few things, then I feel like I'm juggling it. But yeah, sometimes I'm just like, whoa, I got a lot going on. What am I doing here? So I think as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and see what's working and see what's not and say bye-bye to the things that are not, because you're just going to waste your time and
Yeah.
no one's
Yeah.
buying it. No one's interested in it. And I'm not doing this work to like do it for myself, because that's not, it's not for me, And also if I want to bring people together, I got to do something that they are interested in, that we as a group are collectively interested in. So yeah, it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful
Trying new
because
things.
there's like a lot of adoptees and former foster youth that are like thinking about creating their own business, and especially like focusing on adoption and just education, just being on social
Yeah,
media, even if they're not monetizing, and just like wanting to share their stories. And just like realizing there's a lot of different pieces involved, and it's not always just about like just clicking a post and then sharing it and then going viral and then happily ever after your business is perfect. Because
yeah,
I've gone viral like a few times now on different places from sharing my story, and it's a lot.
yeah.
Like I just HuffPo just randomly shared my essay from 2019
Oh
again
my gosh.
on their Instagram, which is lovely. Like I'm glad they're still sharing it and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Is it
I
like a high and low? Like it's like all this excitement and then it just kind of drops off?
kind of, because for me, like if they tell me that they're gonna share something, like if I'm just writing an essay, it goes out and they're like, oh, it's gonna come out in January. I'm like, okay, cool, January. I have that date in my head. I
Prepare
know it's
myself.
coming. But literally last night, I was having dinner and then I was just scrolling on my phone, and then I see it, and then the comments start coming in, and they don't even tag me, so I have no idea until someone else sees
Wow.
me, because people know my story now, so they'll tag my Instagram. So I was like, oh, what's going on? Why am I getting so
Wow.
many tags? Oh, they shared it again. And literally, I can check right now. There's like
Wow.
dozens and dozens and dozens of like awful comments, which I know they're gonna happen. We
That's cool.
know if you share your adoption story, it's gonna happen. But what
That's cool.
it's just like a little upsetting for me when I'm not prepared for it. So then it just pops up, and then it's like, okay,
Like triggering.
I didn't even have a second, because if I know I'm gonna share, I can be prepared. But it was just like it came
Oh,
out of nowhere.
it sounds kind of like, I don't know, sometimes if I'm texting my sister or an adoptee friend, I might be like, trigger warning, this is about biological family members, or trigger warning, this is about, and if you don't have that and you're just, like you said, just casually scrolling, like, now, but in your mind, you're anticipating like the negative comments, the positive comments, the extra tags, like all this attention that you're like, I wasn't prepared for it. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, that's basically it. And
That's hard.
it was just like so many people who were like commenting about how I should feel bad for my parents because they were barren. Like I've like
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
like literally they said
Oh my
barren.
gosh.
They're barren, you should feel bad for them. I feel bad for them because they were barren. That's really like stigmatizing and that's upsetting for them.
Oh,
And it's just so funny to me because I get it. I get believing that parents are doing the best that they can. But
mm,
what is not said is that parents are human. Parents make
yes.
mistakes, and every other parent, a step parent, a biological parent, a guardian, whatever it is, you can criticize and say, oh, well, they made a mistake, they spanked me, they did this, they did X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z. It's like, oh, my parents got separated, oh, you need to go to therapy for that because they messed you up. But an
Right.
adoptive parent, you cannot say anything without
It's like
people
they're,
attacking
oh,
you and getting
yes.
like this knight in shining armor bulked up and ready to go with blows, and they will not hold back. They make
That's true.
assumptions just from like the tip of the story. They won't even read the whole thing. They'll just read a snippet and they'll be like, well, you were in a loving home, you should be grateful of that. Oh well, you would have been left in Colombia because, oh, if you like it so much, go back to that country. um
Wow.
yeah, would you rather be on the
Wow.
street and stuck in the orphanage? Oh, they shouldn't have adopted you. Oh, how dare you do this to your adopted parents? Yeah, yeah, yeah. All these
Oh
things,
my gosh.
which is whatever. But my point is that they feel such an entitlement and a need to protect these adoptive parents that are adults. And
That's very true.
we didn't make this decision. We never chose to be
It had nothing to
adopted.
do with being adopted. Yeah.
This is something that happened to us, and people just want to hold really tight to this positive adoption narrative that
Yeah.
when something is threatening that idea, they will go to blows over it because they
They
don't
will
want to
go
let it
hard.
go. And the funny
Yes.
thing to me is like they don't even have to be personally connected with
I
adoption.
was gonna say, I feel like there's a lot of strangers in the comment section.
It's people
It's
in
just like they're so
general have,
strongly connected to
yeah. And so
you just laid out.
that's what we're going up against as educators, as adoptees who are sharing our story. This is what we're coming up against. So when people ask like, Melissa, why do you keep talking about it? Why do you keep doing this? Molly, why do you keep putting out events?
Yeah,
Molly, why do you have these groups for adoptees? Because this is what adoptees have to go through.
that's
And
it.
the thing is, this is coming from strangers. These
Yeah.
trolls, I don't even know most of them.
You're
And
like, let's talk about the families around us. Let's talk about what
yeah.
they're doing. Because we
So
know.
these are from strangers. So if you think strangers are
Oh,
comfortable saying this to a random person on the internet, imagine those same comments coming from the woman or the man or the person that is raising you since you were in diapers, who is changing you every day. Now imagine those comments coming
yeah,
from the people that you love the most in your life, that you want to do
that's it.
everything to make them happy. And whether that's an uncle, an aunt, a caregiver, and then telling you need to be grateful, your parents saved you, this and that. Why do you think so many adoptees struggle with identity and mental health? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to like go
No,
on a tirade, but it's
this is
just
great.
so frustrating. And like it's refreshing to have like a friend that gets it.
Absolutely. I forget that we're recording a podcast and this video is part of it because I'm making faces over here like, you know, over here like my facial expressions are saying it all. I'm like, well, don't apologize because you're absolutely right. I feel like you're right about random strangers on the internet saying whatever they want, right? And I'm a random stranger saying whatever I want in a lot of comments too, but usually it's just like encouraging or hey, that's really cool or whatever. I like to leave comments that are positive, and or ask a question if I don't know how to be positive in that certain thread, right? And I'm just talking about general comments, right? I absolutely agree with you that I think that some people have this. You're right. They're like, I'm suited and booted and I'm ready to like go for it. And it's like you think about the medieval times, warriors that are just locking arms, and it's like we have to fight against that. Like we gotta, as adoptees, get through that whole thing. Like I think I think that piece of mental health, what you just said, is why so many adoptees speak, because we've all lived experience. We are all experts in adoption because of our own story. And I think that for the adoptees who have seen hell and back, the adoptees that, had a decent life or whatever, but want to still talk about it, like all of us have a thread in this and have an ability to say something. And even if people don't want to talk about it verbally, but say something online, that's dope because we know our experiences. And we've often been told to be quiet. We've often been told to be grateful. And I'm like, guess what? I don't live in my house anymore with those people. I don't live under their roof anymore, and they do not control me anymore. And now I'm going to speak. And it seems as if when I speak, you don't like it. And I think you're right. And I think a lot of, adoptees have lost a lot by speaking,
Mm-hmm.
have lost relationships, have been threatened. And so it's right. Like I think we're all in this place of passion, and it's like we're bubbling up with a passion, and there's so much of us who've been bubbling up with passion for years, right? There's adoptees that are older than me or have passed on who are bubbling up with passion, and I look forward for the day where it's normal to hear from our voices. It's not normal to hate on us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
like I want to point out like what you just said about like the emotions like bubbling up, and that's there's even like division between like adoptees and former foster youth, because like there when it comes to adoption there's so many heated emotions, and whether people are like pro adoption, pro family preservation, anti adoption. And it's really funny to me because like my whole point is to like advocate for the child and make adoption child centered and more ethical. And like
yes,
while like not everybody agrees with my perspectives, which is fine, everybody's allowed to have
yeah,
their own opinion, but when we're approaching social media and putting our stories out there and we're making this our business, it's just interesting to see like how the community is acting together. And I find that Instagram is pretty supportive and nice. TikTok, it's very like it's a very nice community, I think, with the adoptees and former foster youth. But there is like a few spats here and there, and there's people who like will randomly troll adoptees. But like
mm,
I've found that like Twitter can be so toxic. And
really,
yeah, there's a lot of adoptees on there who are like completely abolish adoption, anti adoption, which
yep,
again, I have nothing against their perspectives. That's their truth, that's what they believe, that's fine. But what
yeah,
I do not like is when other people share their perspective, and like literally I just made a post yesterday like addressing adoption agencies. I was like, adoption agencies, are you going to highlight adoptee voices this National Adoption Month?
mm,
Like, what are you doing to raise our voices? Like, literally, that was the entire tweet. And then I got like inundated by like 3 or 4 adoptees that were just like, well, what do you think that's gonna do? Oh, well, you shouldn't do that anyway. You shouldn't work with agencies. They just want what's worse. They're just a business. They're just thinking of the
mm,
child. And I'm just like, yes, I am aware that most just want to make money. I'm aware of
yeah,
that. But the point is to flip this script and have adoption agencies listen to adoptees. And that's
yeah.
that's that's all it was. Listen to adoptees, raise voices. And then like I was accused of like aiding and abetting adoption agencies. I'm like,
What?
have you read or listened to any of my work? Like, I'm not pro adoption agency. I'm pro raising
Yeah,
adoptee and former foster youth
the
work.
book, y'all.
Yeah, but that's just like it's so funny because like literally it happens from adoptive parents, it happens from strangers, and it does happen within the adoption community within itself too. Because when you're talking about families and family
Yeah,
structures, that's a deeply personal thing. It's like as personal as like
yeah,
religion is to people.
yeah.
But the thing
And I think
is,
it goes to your point earlier, like people are human, right? It's like
yes,
it's like because like I grew up having an experience that travel is good and you can see other parts of the world and culture. And some people might have a perspective that travel is not good. Why would you leave your home? Why would you spend the money? So it's like the same way that you and I are two adoptees. We can have different experiences and different beliefs about one thing within the adoption world, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just, it's like it's just human nature, right? Where we're gonna have difference of opinions based on our experiences or just based on like our hurts and our traumas and our good, the things that we think we hold to be great and good. But I think it's like that's human, and it's good to be able to say, okay, we have difference of opinions, but I don't know about like jumping on someone or shaming someone. It's like, all right. And I
Yeah.
think that the cancel culture is like, my husband is a professor and we talk about this a lot, where it's just like some people feel like they can't say anything out loud because if they do, they'll immediately get like canceled or like trampled down. And it's like the world that I grew up in. I'm 36. I'm like, am I 36 or 37? I'm 36, but like I grew up where you could brainstorm out loud and social media was not the only way I grew up. So it's like cancel culture is not my norm way of thinking, that if someone says something that I disagree with, okay, I can continue on this conversation and see what else is here, or I can tweet at this person and see what conversation comes up. But sometimes people you're talking to, or we're talking to, or they're talking to us, or whatever it might be, people are going to have a difference of opinion, and you never know if they're just like, well, I don't like what you said, so I'm done with you. I'm going to tear you to shreds on this, social media post or whatever it might be. And so I think that's just like hard to navigate because one, we're all humans with different perspectives, and that's good. We should be able to respect that and listen and learn to each other's perspectives, because I think we can actually grow hearing everyone's perspectives as adoptees. It'd be pretty dope to be in a room full of like hundreds of adoptees, and we all get to say
Yeah.
our piece and just be like, okay, that's what that person thinks. Okay, here's the microphone for the next person. What do you think? And here's and that's good. Um, and then remembering that we don't have to cancel anyone's voice or like come like trampling them down, or because it's just like, yeah, well, let's dig into why you think this. And for me, I think I've done a lot of reflecting over the last 2.5 years during the pandemic, where I think a lot of us on social media, and I'm on Instagram mostly, so I think for me that's the main stage in which I'm like looking at, and I like to hear what white adoptive parents have to say, because I have white adoptive parents, and I'm like
Yeah.
curious to know what the white person thinks out here, because I don't know what my white parents think. I gotta go see what other white people think. And I think it's a world of confusion, because I've tried to undo my way of thinking and learning and growing up as a black person who was raised in a white culture home, white norm, and being colorblind and all that stuff. And I was taught to be colorblind, so I thought, oh, racism's fake, and no. It's embarrassing, to say that I believe those things, but ask me who I voted for when I was 18. It wasn't the Democratic Party. Okay, it's embarrassing. But the reason I know why I changed is because someone in 2020, a black male friend of mine in college, reached out and reached out to me and said, "Hey, you've changed. I've noticed that you've done a lot of reflecting, listening, learning. Like I don't know what it is, but you changed. You mentioned that you voted for Bush and when you were 18, and I was just like, this girl's weird, like kind of." And so he basically told me like I had to kind of distance myself from you because of that, and I was like, I didn't understand the significance of what I had said or done as
Mm-hmm.
a black woman at that time in my life, because I didn't even know how to I didn't know how to identify even as a black person at that time, because
Yep.
I was white washed. I was told to be colorblind. I was told I'm American, I'm not black, blah blah blah. I was told to not celebrate the black skin that I was in, essentially. And that was a long time ago at this point. So I'm like, well, I'm 36. I've been out of college for a while, but I'm super, super glad that that person told me that they'd seen some growth, because that was true. I feel like I had grown and have grown and continue to grow. But I often look at, are white people out there growing who are adopting? Because I'm out here trying to not, I'm trying to prevent the future of having more biracial black mollies out here who do not understand their skin, their
Yeah.
culture, and not just understand it, but celebrate it. Like be excited that like you are from somewhere that's really special and cool. And I didn't know where I was from, and a lot of adoptees of color do not know that. And
Yeah.
that's where the unfortunate piece of transracial adoption is. If you is a lot of parents say that they don't know, and that's okay. But then you got to celebrate something. You got to celebrate, and that's where I'm really excited about you and I coming together and talking about some of the things that we do know now,
Yeah.
including my identity. I was found out that I'm Haitian, part Haitian, and I found out that I have a biological father who's still living I can talk to, and all these different things that I discovered in the past 2 years, 2.5 years during the pandemic. We're all locked at home, finding out all this information about
So
ourselves.
many of us were doing that.
Right? It's like, how? The world is closed down and now all of a sudden I have a biological mom, biological dad that I've been in contact with? What? And then it's like, even speaking to you, I'm like, and you know that you've been adopted for now 10 years, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around that as a fact. I'm out here reading this book in a coffee shop of yours, and I'm over here like laughing out loud, underlining, saying yes and oh yeah, and I'm like, I gotta call this girl. I don't know her. I don't know Melissa, but I gotta call her because I need to know her. Because the fact that you put your passion that was bubbling up into words, that is now a resource for parents and a resource for me. Honestly, any adoptee out there, if you guys are looking for something to get excited about, this book is going to help you, I think, personally. And then you can go read the reviews about her book, and some people are like, she doesn't, and I'm like, again, back to the troll,
Oh,
But
thank
back to
you.
really, I take that back to people who are being human and having their opinion. But still, I say, if you're going to have your opinion, then come to the course and learn more about what we're talking about, because we can't sum it up in a podcast or a social media post. But
Yeah.
that's why I'm always interested in talking to white adoptive parents, because I have seen some white adoptive parents parent very well in transracial experiences. I've seen some people grow, and I'm like, wow, this is possible, right? And I believe it's possible, so that's why I continue to talk to that audience. Whereas I know some people in the adoption world are like, I don't have the time or day or mental capacity or trauma space left in my capacity to talk to that kind of folk. So I'm like, hey, that's fair. And so for me, I'm really excited about creating content, with you and with other adoptees. I've done so many events with other adoptees. Shout out to all y'all out there who are happy to use platforms and space and time to share stories that aren't getting shared. And so I don't know what tangent I just went on, but I'm fired up.
No, but I'm so excited. Yeah, for you guys who don't know how Molly and I connected, Molly read my book, What White Parents Should Know About Transracial Adoption, and she reached out to me on Instagram, and we've been chatting on and off for like a few months now, and
Yeah.
I think it was like a month and a half ago, we connected again, and Molly was just like, I want to create a course, and I was automatically down because it was in the
Remember
back.
how I was like, remember how I was like, I want to create a course, and I'm gonna do this course, but like, do you want to do like an intro video, and like that's all? Because in my mind I was like, this girl is gonna be like, girl, I don't have time for you to like invite me to do your course with you. And I was like, she could just do like a little video. It'll be cool. People will be like, oh, cool, it's Melissa. Meanwhile, she's like, I'll just do the course with you. I'm like, okay, great. I'm fangirling over here, like, cool, this is wonderful.
I was just like automatically for the idea because like it's been in the back of my head because like obviously I wrote
Yes.
the book, so I want to work with adoptive families and like help them prepare because my goal is to help children. And in order to do that, I believe that we all have to work together, and adoptive parents hold a lot of power. So when Molly approached me, I was
That's it.
just like, it's been in the back of my head. But like I have so many ideas, and like being disabled, being a woman of color, like working from home with two kids, one with a disability, it's a lot. So, when I was
Yes.
approached by Molly, I was just like, I think it would be too difficult to do it by myself. And, like, what better way than work with another adoptee? That's another adoptee's lived experience. Molly has been working on these events for a while. She's been, like, making these amazing connections, too. And I think we just, like, honestly hit it off because, like, not everybody works well together. But so far, like,
That's true.
me and Molly, like, have been, like, an excellent team. There's a lot of communication. And, like, we have been able to make this program, and if you check out the Eventbrite listing, it lists out like all the things that we're going to cover in each class. Like the first one is, I believe, on like adoption basics and trauma, and then we have a section on like social media, we have a
Yes.
section on racial identity, we have all these.
Cultural identity,
Yeah,
reunion. Yes,
yeah,
like,
reunion with birth family, and I think it's going to be a really amazing thing. And like a lot, we will be touching on a lot of the topics that I talked about in my book, but obviously in a book you can't go over every little thing. There's only a certain amount of pages, so we are going to have like
yes.
amazing examples. We're going to have activities, we're going to have like all these amazing things to work with adoptive parents, and the whole goal is not to shame. This is supposed to be an open
Right.
environment where adoptive parents can come and be honest, be vulnerable. We want you to
Yes.
get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what better way than to do it with two adoptees with lived experience who
Yes.
understand what it's like to be a transracial adoptee, have different experiences coming to the table, and where we can support you and walk with you on this journey. And
Mhm.
I think it's going to be an amazing thing. We already have several people signed up, several people interested, but
Yes.
don't miss out because tickets are on sale until the end of the month, so Halloween. And the first class is going to be on the first Tuesday of November. So, don't miss out because I don't think tickets are going to be as cheap for the next class.
And I want to say, Melissa, you that was a great explanation, description, and everything. And you in the beginning said help prepare, adoptive parents. But I also want to throw in there that like, as you and I discuss all the things we're planning, this is also like could be a refresher. It could be a day to day. And I think if you've never taken a course from an adoptee or more than one adoptee, then this is like the course for you. It doesn't matter if your adopted child is a teenager or you're an empty nester and your adoptive person is out of the house at this point. You could still really learn from this course because like my friend called me in 2020 and so messaged me in 2020 and said I noticed you changed. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing to all white adoptive parents out there, if your transracial adopted daughters, sons, anyone who you've adopted, however they identify, wouldn't it would be great if they called you up and say, hey mom, hey dad, I realize you've changed and I appreciate that. What an investment that would be, because that would be dope if parents who've abandoned their adoptees would say that. That would, I mean, would change and would come forth and learn something new. And I think that's why it's beautiful. None of this information is going to be like, here's what you do to adopt. It's none of that information is in this course. It's about how to support the family, how to support the culture of your home, how to educate yourself, and like Melissa said, be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, or be comfortable with being uncomfortable, maybe, um, and learning how your role as a parent has to kind of be brought low. You need to be humbled in some ways. Well, I'm learning too as a parent. We have to be humble, y'all. Our life depends around. My life is dependent around when my kid wakes up. I don't set an alarm. He wakes me up, y'all. It's like, mom. I'm like, I don't have to set an alarm. It's 6:50. It's 5:30. He wakes up. So the same way that I have to be humble and kind of like plan my life around what my kid needs, the same way that we have to be humble in admitting the things that we think that are wrong. We have to be humble in, you know, thinking about the things that we have our own trauma in, and not just finding relief for our sons and daughters, but we need to actually find relief for ourselves. So I'm saying that to you as a white adoptive parent. We will be tackling some of those things, and so this is to prepare you for better loving your child, better loving your adoptee, and helping with the day to day, improving your culture in your family, improving the culture in your home. And I really, really want some white adoptive men, parents, male parents to come out to this course as well. I'm in a couple of those Facebook groups, and I'm out there saying, hey, where are the dads at? Because sometimes I feel like the adoptive dads can sometimes kind of fall out of the light, and not really be as strong in our lives as the mom figure. But I think that I'd love to see some dads engaging in conversation and really like in the Facebook group in between the classes discussing some of the topics and whatnot. Because I think dads are awesome. My husband's an awesome dad, and I know that dads have great qualities that sometimes just get less noticed. But y'all are out there, so
Yeah.
know that this is a course that is not just like an intro. It's not a 101 like things you should know. It's a 101 like this is the 101 opportunity from adoptees. Like how many times have you had this experience? So don't let it be your missed opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. And then I also want to reiterate that like Molly and I were not here to just like point fingers and laugh and be like, "Ha, you made a mistake. We gotcha." The whole point is to grow together. And what I found really wonderful in my journey that not every adoptee and adoptive family gets to experience is that if you guys will, well, you know me if you've been following for a while, but I didn't find out that I was adopted until 19. And there were a lot of bumps along the way. And so my adoptive parents and I, we always didn't get along, and there was a lot of animosity, there was anger, there was grief that we all had to go through. And I was inspired by that journey of growth with my family. So I want to help other families have that change and work together and not just, you know, one of the solutions that you can go through that some adoptees go through is they say, well, my parents aren't going to change, and I don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, and then the families are separated by many years. They don't talk anymore. They're ostracized from one another. But with my family, I had that choice where I could have just given up on my parents and been like, "Oh well, this is too hard. I don't want to deal with it anymore." There were so many tears. There was so much anger. There was so much pain on both of our sides. But then something changed in me when I was pregnant, and I struggled with infertility, and I've always had medical issues since I was a child. And when I became pregnant and I was going through that process, I really I felt like I could understand my birth mother's shoes and my adoptive mother's shoes a lot better. And it was in that moment where holding my baby on my chest and just thinking, well, how could a mother place a child? What did my adoptive mother feel when she finally had me in her arms? And to not be able to carry your own child, the grief that goes with it is really, it's a lot to deal with. But that was my adoptive mother's responsibility, was to work on herself and heal her trauma. But unfortunately, that kind of clouded the needs of her child, me and my brother. And so those were things that we needed to address in adulthood. And let me tell you, me and my parents, we made a lot of mistakes along the way. But one thing that we have always been good at is open communication. And my mom was not shy to say how she felt. I was not shy to say how I felt. And we were able to grow together because we didn't want to lose what we had. And we knew at the root of it that despite the mistakes that they made, despite the pain that they caused, we still loved each other and we valued that relationship. And it was, we weighed the pros and cons because some relationships can't be salvaged. I feel like some people need to know that. Some relationships can't be salvaged. But there was a point where if my parents didn't change, a lot of people who listen know that they had a lot of prejudices against people of color. This was a hard boundary for me because they needed to learn about white privilege. They needed to learn about different identities and cultures and get rid of the discrimination that they had. And having children that are Latino, mixed race, indigenous children, I needed to create a safe home for my children. So that was a no context. These were things that needed to happen. And it came to a point where my parents needed to make this choice. Were they going to grow, or were they just going to settle and just not change because it was easier just to have their beliefs? And I'm gonna admit it, my parents aren't perfect still. Nobody's perfect. I'm a parent. I make mistakes all the time. But what salvaged and keeps our relationship going is that we are willing to admit to our mistakes. We're learning to grow and address them and work together. And so that's why I wanted to share this with you guys, because I really don't want adoptive parents coming into this afraid. And I've had many consultation with adoptive parents. I've worked at many agencies doing workshops this past year. I've done dozens. I have a keynote. I have other conferences. I've worked with agencies in the UK. I've worked with agencies in Africa. And sometimes adoptive parents will get on and be like, well, I was really scared to meet you. I didn't know what you would think. I didn't know if you were going to judge me for wanting to adopt a child. And I get that fear, because when you are dealing with infertility or just wanting to adopt a child and you're opening your ears to all this new information, a lot of times adoptive parents will feel like, oh, well, is adoption a bad thing? Is adoption this? Am I doing a bad thing? Am I being selfish? What should I do? So there are a lot of these feelings going on. And if you are just going to let them take over you, you're not going to think about, well, these are all the issues that I'm dealing with. now I need to deal with learning all this stuff for my child as well. It can get overwhelming. So I definitely think that we are going to address a lot of the concerns. We're going to go over a lot of topics that a lot of courses are not necessarily going to go over. So yeah, so that's my spiel
Oh,
basically.
thanks for sharing that. It was really good to have. I mean, thank you for being so vulnerable to share that. It's probably not new necessarily to people who listen to you and subscribe to your channels and whatnot, but I appreciate you sharing that, just from one human to another, especially like being a mom, becoming pregnant. It's not as easy as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
And, I think that's like, again, why I like to talk about topics like that just in general in my life. Because I think it's, social in a social setting, people are like, oh, you're pregnant, congrats, but they don't know how long it took you to get to that moment,
Mhm.
how you're feeling. They don't know what happened years previous to your, all the gynecological appointments you got there, and were they great? Were they hard? Were they easy? People are just like, oh, when's baby two? And it's like, yo, chill, like, I have a friend who's like, unless you're gonna come to all my appointments with me and all that, then don't ask me when I'm gonna get pregnant. I was like, yes, I love that, because it's such a sensitive topic. And I think also for adoptees, you know, some of us struggle. Do I want to be a parent? Do I want to be a mom? Am I fit to be that? I have a lot of trauma, or former foster youth. I was just reading someone's former foster youth, her page about her being a new mom, and I was just like so amazed by the things that she shares and the things that she puts out there. And so many people are willing to be vulnerable. So many adoptees and former foster youth are vulnerable to a T, right? It's almost like we don't know how to not be vulnerable, which is great. I guess unless there's oversharing, but I think that's just part of us too. But I think that like that's where white adoptive parents can learn from us. That's why I think just white people in general, America does not really teach like being vulnerable is cool. But I think that it's very much so the kind of just be nice and keep moving and don't give too much, don't rock the boat kind of. And it's just like, but because I'm in proximity to white folks and I have grandparents who are white, and I have, well, grandma, and I have aunts and uncles, and I have, cousins that have children that I'm related to all those folks through my adoption. I need people in my world to understand what we're talking about, the sensitivities in which you're talking about, the the struggles in which you spoke about, and the open conversations I think is really, really great. Which actually I have an event called Open Conversations with Adoptees, which is basically like it's basically like flies like it's typically targeted towards white folks who want to adopt, or anyone who wants to adopt. You don't have to be white, but some of the conversation is transracial adoption. But the cool thing about that is people who are interested in adoption or fostering, or maybe have a sibling within the system or whatever. They're like, I want to learn about this, and so we have a conversation about it as adoptees, and it's kind of like the attendees are flies on the wall almost. And so it's kind of unique because it's kind of like candid conversation. You're just going to listen in, and you're going to probably hear some things that we're not going to water down, um, which for me is good because like you said, I think you say on what's your your motto on your adopting page,
Oh,
like
it's like
delving into.
delving into the nuances of transracial adoption.
Yeah, I think that's like I like that because it's just like we have to dive in, we have to delve in, we cannot just stay on the surface, like there's so much more. And I think a lot of adoption agencies and the process of adoption is kind of just people are just waiting. You're just waiting in the water at that point. Yeah, you went through the process, cool. You completed your family. You've never delved in yet. There's been no doubt. You haven't even gotten out of the baby pool yet. I need you to get into the end where you're treading water. Treading water is going to be course number one for us, where we're going to be talking about the history of adoption and trauma. And that doesn't mean it's going to be like boom coming at you, because we all have trauma. Every person in the world has trauma. And like you said, my husband will be talking about that. He's a professor, been teaching education, been a teacher before, all this stuff. So he does a great creative exercise to help us talk about that. But what's really cool about that is you can't really talk about trauma on the surface. You got to go deep, And so that's why I love that we're tailoring our classes, our courses to be really focused on getting into the deep end. And I'll give you a floaty. Here's a floaty. Hang on to the side of the pool. But we're going to talk about these things. We're going to have to tread water a little bit. Um, and I love that you press into adoption agencies and then you say, what are you doing? Are you letting us speak? Are you paying us to speak, etc.? Because that forces them to also get into the deep end. And that's where we really need culture to go too. So I know that our adoptee crew out there, people online, people not online, are just doing a lot of stuff, being creative, having conversations, and really striking a chord with folks who are trying to adopt. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm thankful for people who have helped me to say, let's try this and let's have this conversation. And I've had a prospective adoptive parent who's biracial and black and say basically like she was interested in it and then she listened to a couple things that I hosted and listened to a couple things that other adoptees hosted and she said, you know what, I think I'm learning a little bit more and I think I'm gonna pass on this adoption thing and try something different, maybe guardianship or love in a different way. And I said, thank you, that's good, and I'm not saying adoption is bad or it's I'm against it, but I appreciate that one person said, you know what? I think what I've heard from you and what I've heard from other adoptees is there's another way. There's other ways. So I really respect that. Through conversation, everyone's able to, you know, learn a little
Yes.
bit, grow.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of not ultimatum that you kind of give to your parents, but just were they going to grow or were they going to settle? And that is huge. And I think that's where we differ, and I hope maybe one day in my life it'll be different, but my parents have chose to settle, man. They've chose to settle. They live in a different state and never I don't see them, they don't talk to me, they've never met their grandson. Like it's just weird. I'm like, I never would have thought this. Um because growing up I didn't feel like I felt close, I felt loved, I felt cared for in a lot of ways. There were some things of course I could have done differently because like you said, parents make mistakes. But they've chosen to settle, and I don't know who these people are anymore. And I wish that upon no one. I wish that upon no one who's even just biologically related to their parents. Have a conversation, go to therapy, get some help. Let's just change the narrative here, y'all. Let's do something different so that there are not adult adults out here having strange relationships with people who raise them. That's weird.
Yeah.
Um, got to be able to. I mean, I honestly am I'm so amazed by you and your mom and the story there, and I got to hear more. But I'm just, if y'all can get through it, why can't we? Hey,
Well,
y'all can
that
get through it.
you know what that I love that you say that because like I want to give other families hope, and I'm gonna be honest,
Right.
not every family is going to be able to heal. There's some intergenerational trauma that is never going to be able to heal, but
Yeah.
what I just feel like more adoptive parents need to like listen to adult adoptees because like at the end of the day your baby's gonna grow up. They're not gonna be in diapers anymore. They're gonna
Yes.
be a teenager. They're gonna be an adult. They're gonna have their own opinions. And whether or not you have the most perfect home for your child, there are going to be bumps along the way. And adoptees are more likely to, have some certain mental illnesses. They are more likely to struggle. Adoptees are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. There are things that are unfortunately a reality for adopted and fostered children,
Yeah.
and love is an important ingredient, but it's not the only ingredient that's necessary for a full well-rounded like child to grow up in a healthy way. And they are going to change as they age. They're going to have their own opinions. Sometimes they're going to be completely happy that they're adopted and other times they're going to be really sad, and you need
Yeah.
to be prepared to deal with those emotions and support your child and validate their feelings without pushing your own baggage and your own like opinions about adoption on them. And there are going to be moments where it's going to be really difficult, and like as a parent I understand how difficult it is to talk about certain things with your kid, but these are things that you can't shy away from because they're necessary. And yeah, so I'm really glad that I had this chance with Molly. If we're lucky, maybe she'll keep coming on and we can have these conversations because
Hey.
before we hopped on, we were talking about this new adoption app that matches not adoptees, matches birth parents with adoptive parents. And it's like this, I don't know, it just we could go on a whole episode talking about that. So if you're interested, leave a comment, send us a message, and we will get into that maybe next week.
That's a good point. Yeah, leave a comment if you heard about this app. Tell us what you
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Tell us what you think, and we'll chat about it soon.
And
Thank you again, Molly. I just want to use this quick end to plug anything that you want to plug, your website. Where can people find you and your work?
okay, so I'll do that, and then I'll also end with your quote that I found on the preface. Not even into the book yet, but it's in the preface. But so, yes, you can find me at monarch-connections.com. That's where we connect on, bringing people together and finding what's missing, making meaningful connections. If you want to get signed up for coaching, you can do that there. I got some stuff in the shop there that, needs to get out, so feel free to just check out my website, see what's going on there. I'm at Monarch Connections on Instagram. And if you want to follow me on my personal page, it's jetsetting_365. Although I'm not traveling 365, I wish I was. Yeah, flight. Um, and then yeah, on podcasts, I'd love to be on more podcasts. This is awesome, and we're going to be doing some in-person events. I'm in West Philly, so if you see a flyer around the city and you say, "Oh, I've heard of Monarch Connections," don't be shy. Show up to our events. Probably doing some singles events, networking events, things like that. And I think I'm going to be doing I've never done this before, but I think I'm going to do a court an event with just myself. Usually it's like me and some other adoptees or me and some other people. I think I need to challenge myself to do an event by myself. So I think that's going to be coming in December, starting out in December, maybe for sale through the new year. And so those are some ways you can find me. I'm on Facebook, but I don't really do much with that, so we'll just keep it on Instagram. The quote that I want to leave you all with is this really, really good point. And yes, I'm going to use this really good point to drive home the fact that we have a course for sale. But in general, if you can't make the course, that's cool, no shame. Maybe you can make something else. So hear this quote. It says, I frequently find that adoptive parents often promote fundraisers to raise the cost of home studies and lawyer fees. I never see adoptive parents raising money for education and workshops for transracial education. So thank you, Melissa, for putting that in your book. I absolutely agree, and I'd like for that to change. So if I'm looking at a camera and I'm on a TV show, I'm looking right at the camera and I'm saying white adoptive parents, moms, dads, guardians, get your grandma involved as well, get your aunts involved, get some money, pay for these events, because this is a lifetime of education for you and for your adoptees to feel better and feel more seen and heard. Thanks,
Yes.
Melissa.
Thank you, Molly. I just want to reiterate and thank you again for coming on today. I am super excited. Please check out all the links that are going to be in the description. Again, our course will be on sale all month of October. Get your tickets now. There will be 4 weeks in November. The week off is for Thanksgiving, whether you celebrate, you don't. But yeah,
Well,
so we're super excited. Don't miss out, and we hope to see you there. And if not, we'll see you on social media in the next podcast. I'm so glad that you joined me today. And if you would like to hear more from Adoptee Thoughts, make sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like to learn more about me, you can check out my website, adopteethoughts.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.